follow him until the day of judgment. Allahumma ja'alna minhum. May Allah make us amongst them. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. So Jazakallah khairan again for joining all of you at home. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your ibadah during this month and make this a month where you draw closer to Allah and create lasting change that will go much beyond this month. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. So inshallah, we'll be discussing a few verses that come from Surah Ali Imran, which were recited. If you're trying to do a khatam of the Quran, you probably recited these verses a few days ago. It comes from the earlier part of the Quran in the second or third juz, from the third surah. And in this passage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes through some important characteristics of the people who have taqwa, al-muttaqeen. And the reason why why this is of extreme importance to us right now is because we are in the month of Ramadan, and as we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when describing fasting in Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That fasting has been prescribed for us just like it was prescribed for the people before us. For what reason? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you can gain taqwa, so that you'll achieve something called taqwa. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't in this passage in Baqarah describe what the people who have taqwa are like. He just mentions that fasting will help you get there. And it will, and that's the goal of fasting. But it's also helpful for us to look at what is the Quran and how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually describe the people who have taqwa. And this comes in a later passage in Surah Ali Imran. This is beginning with verse number 133. If you're following along at home, this is chapter number 3, Surah 3, verse number 133, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins and He says, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. He says, compete with one another, race towards forgiveness from your Lord and paradise, the expanses or the width of which is like the heavens and the earth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to compete for this, for forgiveness and for paradise. And who is this made for? He says, this is prepared for the people who have taqwa. أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's prepared for the people who have taqwa. Then Allah will give us a few characteristics, actually 4 traits that are common amongst the people who have taqwa. And He continues, He says, الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس. The first characteristic, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء. These are the people that they spend. When they spend in times of ease and in times of adversity. They spend in times where they have abundance, and they spend in times where they're struggling. Right? And what's really beautiful about this characteristic is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He highlights 2 extremes here. He talks about being in extreme states of ease, and He talks about being in extreme states of hardship, because these are the 2 areas where it's easiest to forget about Allah, and it's easiest to forget about our requirement to spend in His cause. Right? When things are extremely easy for us, when we have lots and lots of money and we can spend a little bit more lavishly, and there's not much of a concern with wealth, we tend to forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of how easy things are. On the other hand, for somebody who is going through tremendous financial difficulty, they don't have a lot of money, maybe they're struggling even to pay the most basic expenses. For them, it's also very easy to forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they're so focused on their own situation and making sure that they are able to pay off whatever they need to pay off. They're trying to increase their wealth because they're in a very difficult situation. So in that moment, it's also easy to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So by covering both of these extremes, actually what Allah is teaching us in this ayah is that the people who have taqwa, they spend in the cause of Allah no matter what. Right? So beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us they spend in the cause of Allah in times of ease and in times of adversity. Right? And this is so important now, especially during this month when we're stuck at home and we're in quarantine, is because just because we're isolated from the rest of society, that doesn't mean that the donations stop. right? We should still be generous. We may not have the fundraiser at the masjid that's gonna actually motivate us. We may not see other people donating in the cause of Allah the way we do usually during Ramadan, and usually that's a form of motivation. But we should still be internally motivated by ayat like this, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the people who have taqwa are the ones who spend in His cause. So don't forget to continue to give in the cause of Allah throughout this month. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, second characteristic, He says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. He says the people who control their anger, right? How beautiful, subhanAllah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, because it's even more important during this month, right? Because we're fasting. So a lot of us, we get short-tempered, right? We're going through our day without food or drink. And of course, that has a very meaningful impact on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, it does, sometimes cause us to be short-tempered. It causes us to lose our emotions quickly. And so because of that, Allah is actually reminding us, and in a larger context here, beyond just this month, is that if you want to be the person who has taqwa, the one who's constantly worrying about Allah, and the one that's constantly aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to be someone that controls your anger. Right. And I've heard a lot of people who, when they come across ayat like this or a hadith like this, they say that, anger is just a part of their personality. Right. And they seek forgiveness, and sometimes they feel bad, but they also give themselves the excuse, and they say, no, anger is a part of my personality. I can't help it. I just get angry sometimes. I can't do anything about it. This is actually not something that we should be doing. We shouldn't be telling ourselves that we have the excuse of getting angry, because at the end of the day, the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala both are advising us to control our anger. There's a very famous hadith where a man came to the Prophet ﷺ seeking advice, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, La taghdab. He said, don't get angry. And the man continued to ask for more and more advice. He said, okay, give me something else. And the Prophet ﷺ said, La taghdab. And the man said, okay, what else do you have? And the Prophet ﷺ said, La taghdab, don't get angry, don't get angry, don't get angry. The reason for this is, again, to drive home the point that a lot of people will gloss over this, right? A lot of people will focus on their salah being perfect. They'll focus on reciting the Quran with tajweed, which are beautiful things. You should do that. But very few people actually take the time to focus on what's internal and take a look at their emotions, right? And really control their anger. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gives us beautiful advice to control our anger. He gives us three things that, more than that, but I just mentioned three things that we can do to control our anger. One, he says, make the isti'adha. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, their anger will leave them. So this is one practice. If you struggle with anger, try this and reflect on these words when you're seeking refuge with Allah from shaitan. It'll help you get over the anger. The second, the Prophet ﷺ tells us to change our physical position. So if you're sitting, or if you're standing, then sit. And if you're sitting, then lay down. This will help you, get rid of the anger and calm yourself down. And lastly, the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us that anger is from shaitan, and shaitan is made from fire. So once you get angry, make wudu, because it extinguishes the fire, right? So three things that you can do to calm yourself down when you're feeling heated, when you're going through these angry moments. And again, this is an important characteristic of the people who have taqwa. We'll talk about two more characteristics, but before we do that, we'll just take a short 1 to 2 minute break for an advertisement, inshallah.
I just want. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, our daughter Anisa has finished the memorization of the Quran. Sister Hanan, we are truly blessed to have you as her teacher. May Allah reward you for your efforts and dedication. My name is Anisa. I just want to say a big thank you to Sister Hanan. Without your help, I wouldn't have finished memorizing the Quran. Thank you, Sister Amani, Sister Amal, and Sister Marvat, for taking my just test and always encouraging me. I also want to thank my friends. You were my support and motivation. And that's Darul Huda. MashaAllah, the dedication of the teachers is very inspiring. They go above and beyond. The teachers work very hard to create a positive atmosphere in which all the girls support one another. Their planning, guidance, and organization is extraordinary. The journey of Hifz is a difficult one, But the partnership that Darul Huda Tafiz teachers have developed with the parents makes it easy not just for us as parents, but the students.
I also want to thank all of Darul Huda Tahfiz teachers for making us so proud of our children. We hope to stay together as a family in Jannah.
I am Musab, and I am also a student of Darul Huda Tahfiz. Thank you, Qari Shahid, for helping me memorize the Quran. Inshallah, I hope to be a Hafiz very soon. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان.
The month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran was revealed, a guidance for the people with clear proofs and guidance and criterion. The month of Ramadan is upon us. It is the month of Quran. If you would like to send a message like this to the community or place an ad for your business, please contact MTMC. The contact information is in the description of this video. Allow us to fill our homes with the recitation of the Quran and for us to follow its guidance. Please keep our family in your du'as.
Ramadan Mubarak!
Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala amma ba'd. So I hope you guys can see see the camera, inshallah. But just to wrap up here, I know we are already through the time of fajr, so we'll take another minute, inshallah, and we'll wrap up. There's a few more characteristics which are mentioned here about the people who have taqwa. Again, we talked about two of them: spending in times of ease and spending in times of hardship, and also controlling anger. The third one, there's a few more, but I'm only going to cover one more, inshallah. The third one here is وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they pardon people, right? And this sort of builds off of the previous point about anger, because sometimes when we control our anger, we don't lash out, but then that turns into some sort of a harboring of grudges within ourselves, right? We may not show our anger outside, so we control our anger, but then because of that, we're suppressing it constantly. It actually turns into a grudge that sits within us, right? And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually making it very clear that it's not enough to just control your anger, right? You actually have to take it a step further, and you have to try to clear out all of that that hatred or that envy or that jealousy or any sort of ill feeling that sits within you, and you have to pardon people. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. And that's not even just forgiving people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said that you forgive people, that the people who have taqwa, they forgive people, but no, he says actually they pardon people, meaning they pretend like anything that they may have been wronged, they pretend like it never happened, right? They really act as if it never happened. And this is such a powerful concept because it relates so closely to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses later on in the surah when he mentions the incident of Uhud, right? And a lot of this is actually in preparation for the ayat that are coming about the battle of Uhud, where we know the Prophet ﷺ had given the order to the archers to stand in their post, right? And they were ordered, do not leave the post on the top of the hill, even if you see that the Muslim army is losing, even if you see that we're being killed. And of course, we know the story. I won't go through all the details, that the archers disobeyed the Prophet ﷺ. They disobeyed the command, right? 70 companions pass away that day and are murdered during this battle. SubhanAllah, one of the biggest losses that ummah faced, one of the biggest challenges that they had to deal with. And the Prophet ﷺ now, when the community of the Muslims are heading back to Medina and they have to go and they have to get back into life, past after this battle, and they have to deal with it. They have to deal with this loss. And these people who disobeyed the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're still amongst the Muslims. Some of them lived. And so they're dealing with this tremendous guilt. And the Muslims have this range of emotions that they're feeling. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instruct the Muslims to do? Or the Prophet ﷺ to do? He says, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you were kind with them, and because of that, they stuck around. If you were harsh and hard-hearted with them, they would have left you. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, fa'fu anhum. He says, pardon them, right? Even though they made such a big mistake that cost the lives of so many companions, right? Subhanallah, such a huge error on that the Muslims made, that these companions made, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is instructing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, pardon them, right? So you and I, when we deal with other Muslims, and sometimes they wrong us, sometimes they do something wrong, we may have every right to be angry, just like, and to harbor these emotions, just like the Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ had every right. He gave a very clear command, but they disobeyed. So the Prophet ﷺ had the right to be upset. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs him, fa'fu anhum, pardon them, as if it never happened, right? So during this month, take the time to really come to terms with your internal feelings. If you have any sort of envy or hatred or a grudge against any of your fellow Muslims, use this as a month to clear that up, right? Don't let that stuff, hold you down, because again, it's not about you and that person, right? It's about your relationship with Allah, and it's about reaching this status of the people who have taqwa. And this is really one of our biggest goals during this month, again, because when we fast, we're trying to get taqwa. So we need to start acting upon the characteristics of the people who have taqwa. So just to summarize, and we'll end, 3 characteristics of people who have taqwa. Number 1, they spend in times of ease and in times of difficulty. Remember that during this month. Spend in times of ease and spend in times of difficulty. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and they control their anger. They swallow their anger. They make sure that they don't lash out with anger. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and lastly, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and they pardon people. They pretend like if there's any sort of ill feeling, they pretend like nothing has ever happened. They completely pardon people, right? These 3 things. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to act on these 3 characteristics and upon all of the beautiful characteristics that are in the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reflect on the verses of the Quran and use them to create action within our lives. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to use this month to create lasting, sustainable change within us. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الصلاة خير من النوم. الصلاة خير من النوم. ألا الله أكبر الله أكبر لا